Pete Hegseth, who's President-elect Trump's pick to head the Department of Defense, will face senators at a confirmation hearing tomorrow, kicking off a week of action on confirmations on Capitol Hill. Senators Roger Wicker of Mississippi and Jack Reed of Rhode Island, the two head lawmakers on the Senate Armed Services Committee, received Hegseth's FBI background check on Friday, two sources tell NBC News. The 25-member committee does not necessarily need to review Hegseth's background check to proceed with the nomination hearing, but two committee sources familiar with the process said it was unprecedented that the report took this long to get to the panel's members. Democrats on the panel have been frustrated by the delay and suggest the report may not be thorough, but they say they'd prefer to see it before Hegseth's hearing tomorrow, regardless. A spokesperson for the FBI declined to comment. Hegseth, a veteran and former Fox News host, has faced multiple controversies and allegations since he was announced as Trump's defense secretary pick. He's met with multiple Republican members of the committee, but his team has told most Democratic senators that he would only be available to meet with them after the hearing. Joining us now is senior investigative producer and story editor for NBC News, Sarah Fitzpatrick. Sarah, let's dig into your latest story because it lays out a lot about, A, what's typical to the background check process, and B, why Democratic senators are frustrated about this. So take them in order. What is actually the norm for this?
So typically, the transition team, the presidential transition team, can ask the FBI to conduct a background check. And it sounds exactly kind of like what we do here. You go back and discuss, look through people's finances, talk to their spouses. It's kind of a wide range and typically is a very exhaustive process. Yeah. But the key point here is that the client, the person who orders this background check, is the transition team. It is not Congress. So they can lay out what the parameters are in terms of which witnesses they can speak to, how thorough they want it to be. And I think that's where we're going to see some really potentially explosive conversations on Capitol Hill, because our indications from our reporting is that this background check has not contacted everyone that we would typically expect the FBI to contact.
Yeah, you've been doing a lot of reporting in this space, both on the allegations of misuse of funds when Hegseth was at various veterans organizations. There are people who have said to you, I haven't heard from the FBI.
Absolutely. In fact, as of this morning, people who worked closely with Pete Hegseth or have been contacted by Congress about Pete Hegseth's behavior, they have not heard from the FBI. And so it's an indication that, even the very surface level of this has not, those conversations have not taken place. And those are people with really critical and important information about this nominee.
There have also been not just Democratic senators who say, I want to see the background checks, but Republican senators as well. Susan Collins, Lisa Murkowski, they've all said to me in the halls, I want to see this before I make any decisions. How abnormal or normal is it for wide-ranging members of the committee, not just the chairman and the ranking member, to not have seen these background checks?
It is unprecedented. Generally, you would share, it's kind of a standard process. You would be briefed on what's in there. It would be kind of a pro forma thing. In this case, it's being kept very limited just to those two members. And again, they're just receiving a briefing from the Trump transition team. They're not hearing it directly from the FBI. And
Why?
That's also a key point. It's not required to be. It's the transition team that presents it to Congress. I imagine that it is possible that Democrats could suggest that they would like to hear from the FBI, but I don't know what the process would be or if there's a precedent for that.
And then there's the reality that they're requesting, and there's no real teeth behind the demand to force someone into actually giving that kind of a briefing.
No, not at all. It's really up to what they choose to let those two members of Congress see, not even the full committee.
Then when you think about Democrats, and I have a sense from my sources of where they're going to be going in some of these confirmation hearings, I think the way that one Democratic aide put it to me is they want to sort of begin signposting where the problems and the resumes are for these people so that when mistakes come, if these folks are concerned, which it sounds like many of them likely will be, Democrats are able to turn around and say to the American people, we told you that would happen. What are some of the things specifically with Hegseth that you expect Democrats to bring up during this hearing?
I think one of the major things that we're going to hear about is, of course, his drinking. We reported back in the fall that he was known for being publicly intoxicated at work events to the point that he needed to be carried out. And our reporting indicated that although he has claimed that that is no longer an issue, that he had been that sources had smelled alcohol on him as recently as the fall.
That was at Fox.
So he was at Fox that he had been drinking on the job, but at the veterans organizations as well, and in other kind of professional capacities. So that's going to be a real concern, because for Secretary of Defense, there is no more critical. It is a 24/7 job, and it is a job of judgment constantly. Most Secretaries of Defense never drink alcohol during their term at all. I think more critically, where we're going to see the more explosive things is around allegations of sexual assault. Yeah. There's this very well-documented report of an alleged sexual assault in Monterey, California. There's an exhaustive police report that has been made public. But we have not heard from the accuser or others that would corroborate that. And I think that signposting, that's where we're going to see the potential, because it is such an explosive allegation. And we just have so little information.
Senators on the Hill were also trying to make the point, I think Senator Lindsey Graham was one of them, who said, if this allegation is out there, which it certainly is, and that police report is exhaustive, you and I both have read it, Graham is saying they should come forward, they should testify. Do you have any sense that that's something that would happen?
As of right now, we don't have that sense. That has been suggested, but based on the sources that we've been able to contact and get kind of some indications, it doesn't seem like there is a huge list of people that are planning to come forward, if at all. Hegseth attorney told us that he has not heard from the committee that there were plans for any additional witnesses. So I think at this point that looks unlikely unless there's a big surprise.
And even without that, it's going to be a bruising
Absolutely.
Hearing. One of the senators on the Hill saying they're in for a train wreck this week, which I think is probably the right way to put it.
Absolutely.
Senior investigative producer and story editor for NBC News, Sarah Fitzpatrick, my friend, thank you so much for joining us.